Okay, this is July. Is it the 11th? Yes, it's the 11th. July 11th, 2023. This is Randall Davidson. And this WWXD, What Would X Do, is about dictation. Let me go and bring up my notes. So I've got this. I shared that in our chat room here, so you'll be able to find it. And you'll be able to refer to it later. There's links on that document. I can just figure out how to get to where I want to go. There we go. So there are links here that you'll be able to look at more lengthy and take your time with that. But right now we'll be talking about writing what you hear and hearing what you write. When you're composing, and I think that you all probably have this experience already, you figure out what you can write, and that's what you write. You don't really have, you might have some sounds in your ear or in your head, or you might have something on the page that you're playing or on the instrument that you're playing. But oftentimes there's a difference or a distance between what you can imagine and what you can actually write down. And usually there's a compromise that happens in all of this happens in everybody's case. You settle. This today, our themes for all of the WWXDs today are how to capture your ideas. And so dictation is the word we use to describe how you get things down, either on a recording or in paper. Musical notation, the thing that we use to write down our ideas, is really a system of symbols. The quarter rest, the half rest, the whole rest, the eighth rest, the 16th, etc. All of those rests, and the notes, equivalent notes, and what pitch they are, where they are on the staff or above the staff or below, what dynamic we write down, the articulations we write down. They're all symbols that are meant to evoke a response in the performer. And they are not so much an accurate representation of what we can imagine in our minds. And so really, it's a very interesting thing. If we were to, the symbols of letters in the alphabet, they evoke sometimes sounds if we want to make sounds out of it, but putting the letters together, they make words, and words are a representation, a symbolic representation of speech. Now, this is interesting concept. Just a moment, just think about this. Do you think there was writing before there was speech? No. We were grunting at each other early in the morning and early in time. We were able to communicate. So writing and language is not communication. It is communication, but the written language, written words, are approximations, and they're meant to evoke or represent what we're saying to each other. Words come first. What we say to each other comes first. And then what the words on the page is something else. For example, Hmong language, the Hmong tribe of Southeast Asia, which was across many national borders, that language was invented in 1953. They were talking to each other for thousands of years, and there was no written representation of that language. They had long, complicated conversations with each other, but there was no written language until 1953. So it's important for us to remember that music notation is only meant to evoke a response from a performer to come close to our ideas. Now, dictation is something entirely different. I have a sound in my imagination or something in my ear, and now I'm trying to write it down to get that evoke that kind of response from a performer. So it's just an approximation, and it's a system of symbols. Recordings are really much more accurate, but those are also only representations. If you've ever done any careful examination of recordings, editing recordings, audio recordings, you know how easily they can be may be manipulated in the editing process. And so they are not the sound, they're representations of the sound. And there have been, in history, there have been many examples of compositions that incorporated recorded sound. And we're going to listen to some of those today, where they use acoustic sounds that are representations of the real sounds, because they don't have, I'll tell you how that plays out here in a second. But there's an ensemble, and then they put the recorded sound in with that ensemble. They're all representations of sound, both the acoustic recording and also the things that are being written down are just representations and approximations of what are in the imagination of the composer. Now, the reason I picked birdsong as the source material or the idea for today is because they happen around us all the time in nature. And it turns out there are dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of birdsong incorporated into musical compositions. And they're used both as a source material for an aesthetic feeling. You evoke the sound, you're not actually representing the sound, and also recorded sounds themselves. This afternoon when I go into the WWXD, we're going to experience together more musical repertoire that attempts to capture and or evoke birdsong. Capture it in some approximation, or play a recording. They don't hang birds in bird cages during the Pines of Rome and say, okay, now on cue, the bird will sing. They take a recording, and we'll talk about that as the example today.
Sorry, excuse me, Randall.
Yeah.
Could you please let Tim into the meeting?
Yes.
And me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Steven.
Steven. Let's see if I can see. Steven just popped up just now. Thank you for speaking up. Appreciate that. So we're going to be talking about Tim and Steven. I shared a link on this on the chat that takes you to the lecture notes, which includes links to some of the examples we're going to be listening to. We're first going to start with I'll reiterate this. Birdsong is our source material today, not just for this morning, but this afternoon. And the reason is because a recording of a bird is only a representation. When, for example, in the Pines of Rome, we don't get a bird cage and hang it over the stage, and then on cue, the bird will sing. We get a recording of it. And that's only a representation or an approximation of a real bird singing. And I was just talking about how notation, when we're doing dictation of the musical ideas we have in our ear, it's just a system of symbols that are only meant to approximate what the sounds are we have in our mind. And sometimes there's this gray area if things that are, the tuning is different, or we're making representation of noise, or all kinds of things that musical notation falls short of. So we're going to be talking about how we can dictate what we hear. And I think the title of this is Writing What You Hear. And then after you've written it down, hearing what you write and checking yourself. Is this accurate representation of what I thought I was thinking? This morning, I'll introduce you to some mental, some musical, aesthetic, and sensorial challenges, meaning how to sense it, hear it. And we're going to use birdsong as the thing that challenges us to capture it in some form. Now, capturing is the topic for today. We're going to talk about Ottorino Respighi, and I love this game of remembering first names of composers, and one of my favorites is Ottorino. Respighi, that's a link to his Wikipedia bio, so it's not a great representation of, great bio, but it gives you some idea. And I'm going to share I'm going to share here in a second. Where is that? Not there. Got to go back to. I've got too many windows open. There we go. I'm going to share my screen so you don't have to keep switching back and forth between your version of linking off to the page. But these links are active, and you'll be able to go back and check this out. This is the Pines of Rome, and I'm not playing the whole piece. I'm just playing the part where we have birdsong. And this is one of the most startling things of this piece. First time I heard it, whoever's heard this for the first time, I think Landon heard this piece in his first orchestral performance. Is that right, Landon?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So Landon, you were a first timer doing live orchestral concert, and then at this moment in the Pines of Rome, it is a startling moment because this has not been done a whole bunch of times, and then Respighi pulls a card trick, the equivalent of a card trick. Here it is. Got a full orchestra on stage. And suddenly, the iteration of the theme, and it becomes an accompaniment to the bird. Okay. The next part of this piece is awesome, but we're not going to listen to it. It's for the brass when they start to march down the Roman via, the road in Rome. So the Pines of Rome is an awesome piece. Loved it the first time I heard it, and it's continues to be one of my favorite pieces. I'm going to now, we're going to look at, listen to this music. Now, I would like you to notate this if you possibly can. I'm playing the music for the Pines of Rome, but just the bird song. Let's do that again. Now, as is true, when you hear something in your mind's eye or your ear and you get something complicated, first thing you either do is the pitches or you do the rhythm. And I'd like to use the same strategy. Do you like to have a pitch? Find what that note is. If you have perfect pitch, it'll be easy for you to start the first note, maybe not, or use it as a rhythm. And just let's do this again. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. And it's not like they did not take Jacob Baranik's motive class. This is different things happening all within seconds of each other. And I think of them as how many utterances, different sounds do you hear when you hear this? Let's just count them. At least 7 is what I hear. Maybe 8. Maybe 8 things. Let's try it again. And try to write down the rhythms, if nothing else. That's just a little bit. I'll do it again because I find the more complex things are, the more you have to listen carefully to this. And this is exactly the issue of writing what you hear and hearing what you write. First of all, you have to hear what it is that's happening, and it's very complicated. And birdsong may be the most difficult thing for us to understand. It passes by so quickly. Okay, who got that? Anybody feel like they got that? I have no idea. So what I've tried to do, yeah, go ahead.
So what I got was, so I kind of wrote out each kind of gesture the bird was doing, just kind of pitch gesture, and I wrote down each one's, and then I kind of created a little like a tempo. I'm not sure what it is, but I kind of measured it and I wrote each note value that each different sound would have.
So were you using so right away we're making approximations from Tim right away at the beginning. You're going, okay, I don't know what the tempo is, because guess what? Birds don't sing in tempo. They're not so I think your strategy is absolutely right. You figure out what the utterances are. There's one thing, there's another thing, there's another thing, and you do clusters. That's how I organize sound. That's how I organize my life. I don't think sequentially, and some people do, but I really have to think of the sounds of almost like gestures. Let's listen to it again. Tim, could you count on your fingers how many utterances did you write down?
Like each distinct sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many?
I got 8.
8? Anybody else get some numbers?
7.
Anybody else? 7. Who was that? Trisha?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got 7. There's one right before the end that I think that there's almost 2 different things. So did you have the same perception?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I know it's hard. Let's listen to it again. Let's start with that. We'll listen to it again. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That beep, 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 beep. There's a one right before that. That beep, 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 beep. That sound. I call that the police alarm or the car alarm. That one. Whoop, 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 whoop. That last couple of sounds I think of as maybe one thing. I don't know how the bird was thinking. I don't understand the syntax of bird language yet. But this is the whole issue of today, is to start hearing what's going on. I'm going to play it again. That's one thing. Beep, 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 beep. Do you write that with a grace note? Or do you write that just as a single note head? Listen to it. What are your thoughts?
I would go grace note. And because
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah,
need
go ahead.
reasoning.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So-
my reasoning. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
My reasoning is that it's the first sound of each little unit isn't a strong beat, and that's normally what it would start with. And it also, you'd think, well, wouldn't it want to be like written out so it could be in time, but they don't sing in time.
No, they don't, but they do have, there's an equal duration of each of those. Beep, 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 beep. How many are there? Beep, beep.
Is that the first one?
Yeah.
I got like 12, I think.
Yeah, I think there are about a dozen in the first one.
You think 12? Let's see if we can't count them. I think you're
I got
right. I
11
think
or
it's 12.
Maybe
Yeah,
11.
I can't. Let's do it again. Okay. Anybody say 11? Who says 11?
I got 11 both times.
I hear 11.
You do? And you think you're 11, Landon? And Tim, you think so too? I'm going to do it one more time. Police car.
Yeah, I'm part of the 11 cult.
car alarm. I think
Oh,
11
yeah.
is a good way to start thinking about this. Now I'm going to go to this, which is, you'll see on the notes that there's a composer named Alexander Lieberman. And he has written the notation here. Let's watch this notation. Let me see if I can get it bigger. Whoa. There we go. So let me try that again. Nope. The one thing wrong with this is that I'm not able to go back. Here we go. I'll try it again. I'll see if that works. I've noticed that in this, the way this works for me, from my perception of that, is that this composer has gone through and I think has probably worked it out very, very, very precisely, because there seemed to be beep like that. That very ending of the rhythm, they tend to be in clusters. By the way, the way this songbird is doing it is that they're clusters of sounds. They're gestural, and I know that in some ways they're motivic. The way Jacob was talking about music, there's sort of motivic relationships that very quickly get articulated. There we go. So this is the nightingale, the same nightingale that we have in Respighi, that same bird, not the same recording, but it's the same idea, the same species. I've gone through and found, let me do this. Let's make a change here. Great. So the Alexander Lieberman is a German French composer. I've got a link to his wiki biography on this lecture. The piece is a collection of pieces called Birdsong, a Musical Field Guide. And he has got a whole channel, which is linked here as well. And the first link under that little heading is Notated Nightingale Bird Call. That is what we were listening to. But he's got a channel, and you can listen to, he's gone through it and notated this. Now, I think of this idea of notating birdsong as a real challenge, really a challenge to do, because it's so, it passes so quickly. I'd like to do another exercise of dictation. If you'll see down at the very bottom of the morning session, it's called dictation exercise. And I'd like to have us do that. There we go. Can you see this? by the way? Yes
Yep.
or no? Okay, good. This is the very beginning. This is what the bird will say. This is a blackbird. And this is got super slowed down. Right now, it's the original bird call. We have about 30 seconds of this, and then it slows way down. But it is like these utterances, little gestures. And similar, motivic. Now we just listened to a little bit. What are the things that are making it difficult to notate this music, this sound? Why is it hard? First of all, it's going by quick, and now I've slowed it way down. What makes it hard still?
It's not perfectly in tune.
Ooh, that's correct. And we are perfectly tuned. Our note intonation is absolute perfection. What about just intonation? It's not that either. It's all over between the pitches are moving around. Dynamic is another thing that I noticed. Some things are very quiet, some things very forward. Pitch definitely bends. The rhythm. There is a variation. There's a pattern you can start hearing. So, I would invite you to try. Take 15 minutes every day for the next few days. Take 15 minutes and try to notate some of this call. Find a pitch, figure out what the patterns are. Maybe just write gestural, short, long notes. And that's sort of what Mr. Lieberman was doing. There's 16th notes or 32nd notes or 64th notes, just as a relative. And he used triplets, he used quintuplets, just to come up with some way of notating it. This slows it down so much that you can start delineating where the clusters of notes go, where the inflections go. Write that in. And now take some time and treat this as an exercise in dictation for yourself. There's not going to be a wrong thing or a right thing here, but you're going to learn to hear what you write and write what you actually hear. This is the challenge. And it's a big challenge. If it's a short challenge, it's not so hard. Just put the alarm clock on for 15 minutes. Don't do it longer than that. You'll drive. I call it the joy of, what did I call it here? The frustration and delight on this exercise. All right. Let me go back to our slow guy. Nope. Where's the slow guy? Not that guy. Where did it go? Is it that? Yeah, there we are. All right, I'm going to stop here. We've got about 4 minutes before, then we also end with a few questions and sort of observations. I want to play this video. It's a link on the lecture as well. And gives you a little background about how this composer, who I studied with for a short while, Olivier Messiaen.
I first came to visit Messiaen in the Rue Marcadet in December 1986. That first session, I remember I was playing pieces from his catalogue d'oiseaux, the catalogue of birds, big piano cycle, all about the birds of France. And he talked to me about the birds that he loved so much. He talked to me about the places where he'd collected the bird song. And he would go off into his sort of inner sanctum and fetch out these little books of birds for me to look at. I couldn't help noticing that these bird books were very simple indeed. They were the sort of book you might give to your 5-year-old, you know. And that gave me an idea. So the next time I came to see Messiaen, I brought a rather special book, The Birds of Great Britain, by the Victorian bird illustrator John Gould. I wasn't prepared for Messiaen's reaction. I mean, he looked at the book and he was completely silent for about 10 minutes, just turning the pages in wonder, making little sounds as he recognized the birds. Well, I'm sitting here in a little park in front of the Théâtre Marigny, just off the Champs-Élysées. And this was the place where Messiaen's work for piano and small orchestra, Oiseaux Exotiques, was first performed on the 10th of March, 1956.
The piece was received with incredible enthusiasm. This was unusual, and it was certainly not always Messiaen's experience either.
Now, Oiseaux Exotiques is an extraordinarily interesting work because it was the first birdsong work where Messiaen worked not from the birds that he heard in the countryside and notated, but actually from gramophone records. It's a set called American Birdsongs, and it was published by the Laboratory of Ornithology at Cornell University in 1942. And it seems that originally he started to write a work that was about American birds. And then about 6 weeks or so into the composition, he went to one of the bird markets in Paris. And there he heard a special collection that they'd got of oriental birds. And he spent 3 days scribbling furiously, writing down all these amazing bird songs from India and East Asia and so on. And he just couldn't resist using all this new material in his piece about American birds. I think it's true that Messiaen was probably very proud of the fact that he had studied nature in a detail that nobody else had bothered to do. I mean, it's an incredible fact, given that we're surrounded by the potential for music in nature, that Messiaen was virtually the first person to go out there, like
wear a beret and go out in the field,
you know, and actually take down birdsong and listen to birdsong really, really carefully.
I absolutely adore birdsong. It can change your entire feeling about life, and it just changes your frame of mind completely. It does mine anyway. As soon as I hear a bird singing, I just feel better, you know. It just makes me feel good. A bird is always identifiable by its song. because it doesn't really vary. I mean, it might change depending on the season or whether they're trying to state a territory or attract a mate or whatever it might be. But
I mean, it was a created thing. The birds were the great songsters of creation. Nature was something that for him was one of the great glories of what God had made.
Messiaen, because of his religious faith, didn't see birdsong as just a kind of interesting noise which might be useful to a composer, but actually something much more than that, actually as music. So it was terribly important to Messiaen to be faithful, as he saw it, to the birdsong. Now, I have to say that this has to be taken with several grains of salt, shall we say, because you can compare now the notations that Messiaen made from recordings where you can actually hear the birds, you can hear the recordings yourselves. You can usually see what Messiaen meant by his notation, but it is very much a translation, and it's a translation, as many people have observed, into Messiaen's musical language. And here's one of the earliest examples of that. It's from Oises Exotiques, the piece that was premiered in 1956. And it's an American bird called the wood thrush. Now, Messiaen's first notation that comes from the recording is very primitive. It goes like this. It's just that, very, very simple. And it goes through various stages and becomes something absolutely incredible. So in the piece itself, it's a sort of little cadenza for piano. It goes like this. So it's something really resplendent and magnificent and very much developed. There's a huge amount, if you like, of poetic license that's...
Yes, it was. And this is l'oiseau exotique, exotic birds. Two, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all kinds of different birds. You can see them in parentheses at the top. A wood thrush from America. Which is what that man just played just a few seconds ago. Now this piece goes back and forth between an ensemble and chamber music and just piano. So it's a really exotic piece because it's not only, and this opens up the walls, should in your imagination. When we're writing for the JCI, we say, okay, I'm writing for this ensemble. And you want to write for all of the ensemble all the time. Well, here's an example. Messiaen says, oh, here's what I got. I've got some music that can be expressed through these instruments, but maybe just one of these instruments could do a part of the movement. And he sort of breaks the bird calls up in just very small pieces, but it has a coherent wholeness to it because it's all bird call. We are coming to an end. That is it, folks. You want to see the second half of the program, come today at 1:45, and we'll talk about repertoire from the that uses birdsong in various different ways, really different kind of approaches. Thank you. Bye.